You are smart. You know that. You have built a life on it. So why does the money not match? This question sits quietly in the back of more minds than you would expect. Not the minds of people who dropped out or gave up, the minds of people who did what they were supposed to do. Studied, worked, got promoted, earned the income, and still arrive at the end of each month wondering where it went. Still feel the quiet anxiety when they check their bank balance. Still feel like they are earning and spending on a treadmill that never stops. The answer is not laziness. It is not ignorance. It is almost certainly not your income. It is something far more interesting and far more uncomfortable than any of those explanations. It is the fact that your brain was shaped by hundreds of thousands of years of human evolution that had absolutely nothing to do with money. And then, in the last few hundred years, a financial world was built in a way that exploits every one of those evolutionary shortcuts your brain takes. You are not losing to your own stupidity. You are losing to a mismatch between ancient wiring and a modern world. And the smarter you are, the worse it tends to get. Let's start with something called temporal discounting. It is one of the most powerful forces in your financial life, and most people have never heard of it. Here is the basic idea. Your brain assigns value to things based on how immediate they are. A reward today feels more valuable to your brain than the same reward tomorrow. And a reward tomorrow feels more valuable than the same reward a year from now. The further away the payoff, the less real it feels. The less urgently it pulls at your attention. This was a reasonable feature when humans lived in the wild. If food was available now, you ate it now, because there was no guarantee it would still exist tomorrow. Immediate rewards were real. Distant rewards were uncertain. Your brain learned to weight the present far more than the future. That instinct kept your ancestors alive. But wealth does not work that way. Compound interest, the most powerful force in personal finance, is almost entirely invisible in the short term and enormous in the long term. A decision to save or invest meaningfully today does not feel like much for years. The reward is so far away that your brain barely registers it as real. But the reward of spending that same money today, the new thing, the experience, the relief, that is immediate. That is visible. That is real to your nervous system right now. So your nervous system wins, and the future quietly loses. Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel Prize-winning psychologist and author of Thinking, Fast and Slow, spent decades documenting the gap between how humans believe they make decisions and how they actually make them. What he found was not flattering. Humans are not the rational economic agents that classical theory assumed. We are emotional, intuitive, fast-thinking creatures who use logic as a secondary tool, mostly to justify decisions we have already made with our feelings. When emotion and analysis compete inside your brain, emotion has a structural advantage. It is faster, it is older, and in most cases, it wins before you are even aware there was a competition. This is not a character flaw. It is a design feature, a feature that helps you react quickly in a crisis, form bonds with other people, sense danger before you can articulate it. That same feature is devastating when applied to financial planning, because financial planning requires exactly the opposite: slow thinking, abstract reasoning, deferred gratification, and a tolerance for boredom that very few people have ever been taught to build. Now add what Sendhil Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir found in their research on scarcity. Mullainathan is an economist at the University of Chicago. Shafir is a psychologist at Princeton. Together, they studied how financial stress changes cognition, not your mood, your actual cognitive capacity. What they found was striking. When people feel financial pressure, even moderate, everyday financial pressure, it consumes mental bandwidth. It takes up cognitive space that would otherwise be available for complex long-term thinking. The result is not that you make different decisions. The result is that you make decisions with less of your brain available to make them. And here is the part that makes this especially painful for high achievers. The smarter you are, the more you believe your intelligence insulates you from this effect. It does not. Cognitive bandwidth is not a personality trait. It is a finite resource that stress depletes regardless of your IQ. The person with the advanced degree and the high income is not immune. In many cases, the same overconfidence that helped them succeed professionally makes them more vulnerable financially because they do not see it coming. Think about what this means in practice. You get a raise. You feel genuinely like the pressure has lifted a little. You treat yourself. You upgrade something small. The apartment, the phone plan, the subscriptions, the meals out. Not recklessly, reasonably, as a reward for working hard. And in a few months, the new income level is no longer a relief. It is a floor. Your expenses have adjusted to meet it. The gap between what you earn and what you keep is roughly the same as it was before the raise. This is what researchers call lifestyle inflation. The technical name for the underlying mechanism is the hedonic treadmill, the finding that humans adapt to improved circumstances far faster than they expect to, and then require the next improvement to feel the same satisfaction. The treadmill keeps moving. You keep running. You never arrive. Richard Thaler, another behavioral economist who won the Nobel Prize, documented something he called mental accounting. This is the cognitive habit of treating money differently depending on which mental bucket it comes from. The bonus feels like free money, so you spend it differently than your salary. The tax refund does not feel like your own money, even though it is. The credit card balance feels separate from your savings account, even when you are paying more in interest than your savings are earning. Your brain creates these invisible categories and treats them as real, separate things. The result is that your financial decisions are not governed by one unified view of your resources. They are governed by feelings about each bucket, separately. This is why financial knowledge on its own does not change financial behavior. You can understand every concept and still watch your behavior contradict what you know. That is not hypocrisy. That is the gap between knowing something and feeling something. The feeling system is faster. It has a head start that knowledge almost never overcomes without deliberate structure. Now consider who else knows this about you. Every business that wants your money has studied your psychology more carefully than you have studied your own. Retailers use pricing structures designed to exploit comparison bias. They place an expensive option next to a mid-range one so the mid-range option feels reasonable, not because it is, but because your brain evaluates prices by comparison rather than by actual value. Subscription services are built on the knowledge that the pain of cancellation is higher than the pain of a small monthly charge, especially when it is automatic and invisible. Credit card companies know from decades of research that tapping a card feels less costly than handing over cash, even when the transaction is identical. The friction of payment affects spending. Less friction means more spending. So they remove the friction on purpose. You are not failing against your own nature. You are competing against systems that were precision designed to exploit your nature, refined over decades, and backed by behavioral science most consumers will never read. And here is the cruelest part. Being smart about it does not help as much as you want it to. Understanding a cognitive bias and being immune to it are two completely different things. Kahneman himself said he remained subject to the biases he spent his entire career describing. The insight changes what you can observe. It does not change the mechanism. Morgan Housel, who wrote The Psychology of Money, made an observation that cuts through almost everything else written about personal finance. He said that doing well with money has little to do with how smart you are and a lot to do with how you behave. Behavior is driven by feelings. Feelings are driven by patterns. Patterns are old. They do not update the moment you decide to be more rational. So what does this mean for you, practically? Not another budgeting system, not another app, not another income target that somehow never quite solves the underlying problem. What it means is this. The most valuable financial skill you can develop is not analytical. It is the ability to notice yourself in the moment before a financial decision, not after. Not when you are reviewing the damage. In the moment. When the thing feels fine and the future feels abstract, and the friction is low enough that saying yes costs you nothing right now. That pause, that small space between the impulse and the action, is where wealth is actually built or quietly lost. Not in the dramatic decisions. In the hundreds of small automatic ones made when your brain is occupied, the friction is gone, and the reward is right in front of you. Your future self is real. but your brain treats them like a stranger, someone you have heard about but never met, someone whose problems feel distant and whose benefits feel too far away to prioritize today. One way to think about it is this. Every financial decision you make is a message you are sending to that future person, not with words, with the actual state of your finances when they arrive. The smartest thing you can do with money is not find the perfect investment. It is close the gap between what you know and what you actually do, and ask honestly without judgment why that gap exists in the first place. You are smart. That was never in doubt. But your brain was built for a world where the threat was right in front of you and the reward was either here now or gone forever. Money does not work like that. Wealth does not work like that. And until your behavior catches up to what your intelligence already understands, the treadmill keeps moving. The question was never whether you were smart enough. The question was always whether your smartness was pointed at the right problem.